Okay, we need to go to the S drive, and on the S drive there is in 1B, or in course resources, in 1B there is a folder called Task 11 Privacy Principles. And I want you to open up, copy and paste it, and then open up Task 11 2013. Okay, the information privacy principles we covered very shortly in the last unit, and now we're just carrying on a little bit further with it. Okay, and the privacy principles, as we talked about before, whenever you're surfing the net, sites and that are always collecting information about you. Okay, and you don't even know it's happening, but they are. And especially those sites that say, do you agree, and you never read all those little disclaimers and all that we don't read. Sometimes in there they say that they can on-sell that information. Sometimes they say that they keep it private. But generally, they are collecting information about you. And it's important that you do know that. And that sometimes they do share that. In Australia, though, they enacted the Privacy Act in 1988 that helps protect Australians and their privacy, especially in the government sector. Okay? The government sector, as far as like Medicare and tax file numbers and things like that, this act was enabled or put into place to protect you and what information the government collects. And that's why a lot of times, and you probably don't know this, but if you go to like Centrelink and they'll ask you all sorts of information about you personally that probably the Australian government has already. And people wonder themselves, well, through the taxation office, you know how much money I make. Why are you asking me all these questions again? Well, the problem is that each separate agency is binded by the Privacy Act and the guidelines, meaning they can't share the information amongst themselves with each other because they're not allowed to. It sounds crazy, but that's actually the law. Okay? That's actually the law. For private business sector, there are no laws explaining what they can do with the information once they collect it. However, there are 10 principles with the Privacy Act for, like I said, the private business sector. But once again, there are no laws that says, right, if a private industry, let's say McDonald's collects information and shares it, there's no law that says that they're going to get fined $1 million. There's no law that says that somebody's going to go to jail. There's no law that says they can't. But they have to follow the principles. And as I said before, if they break the principles, nobody actually fines them or anything, but they will publicize it. They will put it out into the media and say that McDonald's has shared your information. And then everybody gets up in arms over it and complains about it, and McDonald's gets bad press. So really, it's almost like a media and public governing private business and Australia government businesses as far as your private information. Okay, you'll be able to find those in a minute. Okay, and the 11 information privacy principles that they have, and we talked about this before. When they collect it. Okay, the details must be related to the agency's work and corrected legally and fair. They can't trick you into it. Principle 2, they must tell you that it's being collected. They can't do it secretly. Okay, number 3, okay, the information collected is relevant to the purpose and it needs to be up to date. That's why they always have, you can create an account and then you can go back into that account and update your information. And that's a funny one because it says that information must be up to date, but that onus is on the person to update their own personal information. Okay, the storage, principle 4, the information collected has to be protected to prevent unauthorized use or disclosure of the information contained in the record. So it has to be stored properly. You can't let the public get to it. Okay, the person keeping the record knows what the information is about and does not have to reveal any of this information or make the records available to the public, or they have to make it available, not make it available to the public or the commissioner, unless, of course, it is for legal purposes or in a crime or something like that. Access to the records. Okay, an individual can access their information collected unless it's against the law to do so. So you have to have access to that information. It's called, I do believe, like the Information Freedom Act. You can call up any agency and say, I want to see my information. You're allowed to do that. Alterations, the records when altered need to be accurate, used according to the purpose and reason collected, and any changes to the information is governed by law. People have to be able to update their information. Number 8, in regards to the record keeper, okay, before being used, the information must be checked to ensure it's accurate, up to date, and complete. So if they're going to use it for some other purpose, they have to contact you and they have to make sure that it is up to date and correct. Personal information only can be used for what it was collected for. They can't use it for anything else. So that's where the government agencies, they have to have it separate, because some agencies can only use it for certain purposes, other agencies can use it for other purposes. So that's why the information isn't generally shared. Principle 10, the information used for other purposes, the individual has to consent to it being used for other purposes. And limits on disclosure, the information can only be disclosed if giving consent required by law to enforce the law and for the purpose it was intended. It can't be disclosed for any other reason. Okay, so there's the 11 principles in layman's terms that government agencies have to abide by. Okay, once again, nothing happens if they don't. They just get chastised, and the public really get up in arms over it. Okay, the other part of it is the information privacy principles, or this is the information privacy principles, and applies to the government agencies and Australian agencies. Okay, who collects as far as Australian companies? Okay, there's Department of Human Resources, the national banks have it, privacy principles, all companies have it. And where do you find it? If you generally scroll down to the bottom of websites, they will have a privacy principle place for you to have a look at. They have to have that on their website. They have to. Okay, on the other side, there are 10 national privacy principles, and they apply to the private sector. There's only 10 of those, not 11. You can find them there. These were enacted in 2001, and they are to protect you with the government, the private sector, and the information they collect about you. Okay? All right, let's have a look at that task. Okay? Let's have a look at that task. Okay? Basically, let's scroll right down to the end, to the marking key. Okay? Basically, here's what I'm asking you to find out. Okay? The information privacy principles. How many are there, and who do the information privacy principles apply to? There's 11 of them, and it applies to Australian agencies and Australian government-run businesses. Number 2, very quickly, in your own words, summarize each of the information privacy principles. 3, How many are there, and who do the national privacy principles apply to? There's 10 of them, and it applies to the private sector. 4, the majority of Australian government agencies and private companies have a privacy statement. Where do you generally find it? And I'm going to ask you to find the URL for the privacy statement for Medicare and National Australia Bank. So we have a government and we have a private sector. Okay? And 5, because you're going to put this in a Poplet and you're going to be working together, okay, have one Poplet with the name of your group members in there. Okay, so it is a group task. Now let's go back up to the top. How many of you have not created a Poplet account? I think we did one at the beginning of the year, correct? And we used the Poplet, you created a Poplet account with your school email. Okay, and your school email is username@students.chisholmcc.wa.edu. Once you get your 3 people to work together in your group, here's what you do. One person in the group creates a new Poplet called Task 11 IPP. Once the Poplet starts, then go ahead and click the Share button in the upper right-hand corner and click Add Collaborator. Once that happens, you should have the list of, or there should be a list of the students in the class already. But if not, all you need to do is type in their email address in the little box and it will find their account. And so what you do then is the people in your group, you just click their names and you add them as collaborators to your Poplet. Okay? So now you've got one Poplet, but you have all members working on it. So as a group, you have to decide who's going to do what. Okay? Each Popple, as you go ahead and do it, as a person adds a Popple to it, their name will come up on it. So it'll be very easy to see who contributed what to this task. Okay? Each Popple will have the name of contributor on it. Even though it's a group task, individual marks will be given based on the amount and correctness of work completed. The task will be used for your exam review also, so make sure the answers are correct. And the middle Poplet should have Task 11 privacy principles on it. Okay, let me just go through and show you that very quickly up here with Poplet. So I'll go to www.poplet.com. And hopefully it'll work really quick. Oh, and you have to add me to your collaborator list also. Okay, so there it is. You go ahead and log in using your email. And your password. And this comes up. You simply make a new Poplet. Okay, and we are calling it Task 11 IPP. And you make it so. And now it will start up. Over here in the right-hand corner is your Share button. That's where you add your groups. You simply click on Share, go Add Collaborator, and you can see there's Angels, there's Miss Blacks, there's Julian, some other students. Just you simply, if they don't appear here, simply go ahead and type their email address in here and their name will come up. And you click on them, you add them. Okay, so if I was going to do Angels, I click on Angels. Angels, and every group's going to add me to it so I can see your work. And that's it. Okay, and I do believe then you work on your... Yep, you'll work on your Poplet then. Okay? You just add a new Poplet to a middle, call it Task 11 Information Privacy Principles, and off you go. Any questions?